We have an OU newsletter live tonight for you, packed with colleagues to share talent and enthusiasm for particular books. And of course, we have the author spotlight with Nadia Shireen, who's already been in the waiting room. We know she's here with us, so we're waiting and looking forward to that. So tonight's plan of action is this. Let's move on. Yes, we can see a whole range of different colleagues who are sharing top texts, examples of practice. Pam Potter's talking from the Reading Schools programme, sharing some of the brilliant books from Wales, where she is with us tonight. And Curtis Jordan and Catherine get the privilege of interviewing Nadia. They did a splendid workshop at our recent Reading for Pleasure conference in Nottingham, and we're delighted to welcome them back here, as well as TRG leaders and many others. You'll be introduced to them as we travel. So for our session tonight, I hope you've got a book ready for the book wave at the very end, and we've got a fast and furious newsletter live for you to race through with passion and enthusiasm. And as usual, we are starting with a story. Out of the Blue by Robert Tregoning, illustrated by Steph Murphy and published by Bloomsbury. Only blue allowed by blue government demand. Anything that isn't blue by colour law is banned. In a very blue house on a very blue street, in his stripy blue pyjamas, on his blue bed sheet sat a worried little boy who was feeling very blue, for he loved the colour yellow, but no one else knew. The boy got dressed that morning and, as always, made no fuss. He waved goodbye to Dad and he ran to catch the blue school bus. He looked out of the window and watched the blue world pass by. It made him sad to see the workers painting trees and grass. And once at school, he went outside and joined the litter pick. Anything that wasn't blue was tossed in bin bags quick. The little boy, however, lifted something from the truck and hid inside his bag a little yellow rubber duck. He raced back home to add it to his secret closet stash of yellow things he'd rescued from the Technicolor trash. "Dinner's ready," came Dad's call. It gave the boy a fright. He hid his yellow duck and shut the blue doors tight. He sat and ate blue cheese on toast and wished he could tell Dad, but in his heart he felt that loving yellow must be bad. That night, in his bedroom, while the world was fast asleep, the boy crept to his closet just to have a little peep. He lifted out his rubber duck and handled it with care, then in a sudden flurry tossed his treasures in the air. As his things flew round the room like dancing yellow kites, his sticky notes, his submarine, his pair of yellow tights, he leapt into the whirling glow and bounced among it all. But whirling round, he heard the sound of footsteps in the hall. He heard them creeping closer, and he stood in total shock. He saw the landing lights turn on and heard the... He watched the handle turn and heard the creaking of the door. There was no time to tidy up. His dad walked in and saw yellow things crash-landed on the carpet from the air. Dad saw his son stood frozen. Yellow stuff spread everywhere. The boy was terrified. He couldn't breathe, he couldn't think. He felt his dad's eyes on him and he felt his stomach sink. "Don't worry," said Dad softly. "I'm your dad and I love you. So if you do love yellow, then I know just what we'll do." That wasn't what the boy had thought his dad was going to say, but Dad's words made him think, could loving yellow be okay? They bounced down the blue stairs and through their blue front porch, then out into the garden by the light of their blue torch. The boy watched as Dad searched inside the back of their blue van for everything they would need to carry out their plan. Early the next morning, sitting at their window seat, they saw the lady with the post stood staring in the street. She looked a bit confused by what the boy and Dad had done, for she'd never seen a house painted the colour of the sun. Day by day, the boy watched as a group of gazers grew. More people came to marvel at the house that wasn't blue. Until one day he woke up to a most surprising scene. The house next to the yellow one was now a shade of green. As days and weeks went by, it didn't just stop there. Their lick of paint had sparked a change of colour in the air. Their world, which once was very blue, was now made up instead of blue and purple, pink and green, orange, yellow and red. Sorry, I've lost the scan. Now everybody lives life in whatever shades they like. One neighbour grows red flowers, one man rides a purple bike. The boy runs for the school bus. He's no longer feeling sad. He grabs his yellow lunchbox and he waves goodbye to Dad. Life is like a rainbow. We all love different things, so celebrate your difference and enjoy the joy love brings. Whether you love yellow or whether you love blue, let your colours shine and love whatever makes you you. And that's Out of the Blue by Robert Groening and Steph Murphy. Okay, moving on tonight then into our research and updates. Our very first one is from Sarah Stanley, who's going to be sharing some top texts all the way from Norfolk Children's Book Centre. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, hi. Lovely to join you on behalf of Norfolk Children's Book Centre. I'm going to whiz through three of our top recommendations that have been published in the last 3 months. So the first one I'd like to share with you is called Down the Hole, and it's by Scott Slater and Adam Min. And it is no accident that we chose this story. We love this lovely Key Stage 1 text. It's full of delightful outwittery, where we know the bit reminiscent of Clever Polly and Stupid Wolf, where the fox is trying to lure bunnies out of the hole, but the bunnies have got other plans, and they, in return, are trying to trick the fox and keep him on his toes. This one celebrates the cleverness of children. We love the intricate details. We love the bunnies plotting the downfall of the fox. We love to think about returning to this story with all its joyfulness. It's one with a beautiful rhyme, lovely pictures and humour. I can't say that it isn't a little dark, but I can promise, maybe I can promise, that no foxes are harmed in the making of this book, or can I? Our second book, and that's published by HarperCollins. The second book I want to share with you is this one here, and this is A Daydreamy Child Takes a Walk by Gianni Rodari, wonderful Italian storyteller, and the amazing illustrator Beatrice Alemagna, and it's translated from Italian by Anthony Sciugga. We love this story because it celebrates childhood. It celebrates that relationship between a mother and her child, and the feelings of trust and unconditional love, but also the way that other adults are responsible for the children. So Giovanni goes out for a walk one day, and he has to be reminded not to daydream, to keep all ahead of, all his senses aware. He goes out, am I all here? He checks, yes, he is. But then he's very easily distracted because he's a child and he's curious. So as he goes around, he not only loses his head in the clouds, but he starts to lose other body parts as well, because, life is distracting, especially when you are out and about in the world and getting to know it. This one is about how children are accepted as normal. Just the way children are is the refrain in this story. It has these beautiful but unsettling multimedia collage images, and it depicts not just the fragility of childhood, but also the joy of having a parent who wanders the streets with their child, stopping to look at the everyday simple things that we often forget.
Sarah, you've got 30 seconds for the third one.
And the last one from 30 seconds, Small Things Mended. This one is absolutely beautiful. It is about somebody mending their heart. And they do this by mending small things. Now, the character Cecil in this has more than just his heart broken. If you look carefully at the pictures, you can see that there are other things that the clues in the pictures, and this delightful calm, quiet noise that happens in this story. The illustrations are there to fill in those moments of quiet grief, and it's about community and diversity, celebrating the fragility of human and how things can be mended with empathy. And that is by Casey W. Robinson, illustrated by Nancy Whiteside. Small Things
Thank
Meant.
you so much, Sarah. We must
Thank
look
you.
at Sarah's new book too, which is coming out in the summer, which is called One Button and the Sea. So soon to be author Sarah Stanley, working at Norfolk Children's Book Centre. Brilliant. I'm moving us on to share with Rich Charlesworth, who's back here from swimming with now wet hair. Excellent. Our research in Seeing Beneath the Surface. We're a whole team of us working in the OU during lockdown, tried to explore picture books which had hope. And we wanted to share those books and to share ways of looking at those books. The aim was to really, in terms of its title, help young people and adults see beneath the surface, not to evaluate the text, not to analyse it, but to understand it better, to develop a deeper understanding of the text through noticing more closely. And so Rich and I are going to share some of this with you now. Our research questions were around how do the picture fiction mediate hope and understanding, and how can reading together, that shared experience, whether that's parent and child or a class teacher in the whole class or a class teacher in a small group, be enriched to support that process. We do on a wide range of research literature from both those fields of research around reading together. Rachel Levy's work, for example, about how reading together can support well-being and that sense of relaxed engagement and intimacy we get with adults in that context, or indeed peers. And then the whole focus of picture fiction and how useful picture fiction is to help us understand sensitive issues. So that was the kind of framing. Over to Rich to explain the process.
So we had the joy of reading and analysing over about 200 texts in the initial selection, and this led to our shortlist of titles which were pitched across age range and across different themes. And the text drew out a range of different emotions, including the project's aim of hope. We had also emotions around fear, worry, anxiety and uncertainty. Characters and also significant or symbolic objects dealt with these emotions through a range of different character traits and also in a range of different contexts and themes. Just like the two texts you'll see on the right-hand side, text reflected a range of social and relational issues, as well as exhibiting diversity in all of its forms. So this was my sort of big part of learning, coming sort of with a picture book background. I learned lots about systemic functional linguistics. So we took anchored by this framework, which focuses on SFL. We combine this with a picture book framework created by Painter et al. And synthesize this into the framework that Teresa will show you shortly. So these three key areas are ideational, so how language constructs meaning about the world of the text. And that includes things like actions, events, and the experiences. There's the interpersonal, that's the relationships between the characters in the text, including the different power dynamics and how they're represented. And finally, the textual, how the words are positioned on the page and whether they agree or sometimes offer different meanings to the illustrations. So there's two examples here. One of my favorites, The Proudest Blue. So in this, under the ideational section, we're able to hone in on specific types of language. For example, here noticing what things are quoted or reported as speech, and also what it tells us about a character's own feelings and emotions. If you've read this text, you'll know how affirming and proud Asiya is of her hijab. So combining with the direct eye contact we have with her sister, the message is strengthened and affirmed. And in the second example, we're focused in on the interpersonal section. We can see how the framework allows readers to focus in on both the illustration and the language that's associated with where the character's looking. For example, here, the gaze. In illustrations, this might be through eye contact or with the reader themselves, whereas in a No Money Day, we've also got the daughter who's glancing towards the food on the shelf. So in Jabari Jumps, the image on the bottom right-hand side, we get a vicarious view, seeing Jabari's view from the top of the diving board, his family beneath him. These illustrative examples can be explored alongside the text, which gives us more information about the texture of the board in this case, and perhaps his fear of heights.
Right, so the final framework that we developed over lockdown is looking like this. It's on the website now, it's free to access, and there's some explanatory text to go with it. We hope it'll be useful to the profession as you move forward. What we want to be really clear about in our examples that we're sharing with you is this is not about analysis paralysis as well. We want to be really clear that it's about slow looking, but not digging deep so that we can then name the parts of the text or any other part. Of course, the words and images may or may not offer the same kinds of layers of meanings as Rich is highlighting. Two or three very quick examples now from the classroom.
Yeah, so similar to what Teresa's just mentioned, this isn't designed for us to provide an answer or a crib sheet to what the author and illustrator wants to convey, but provide children with a shared language. This is something I did with my class last year in year 6. Picture books are plenty as usual, and it helps children engage with and equips them with that language and words to describe what they notice. So it's really enriched our discussion and talk within the classroom, and especially with examples from here. You can see that by focusing on different areas of the framework, we're able to highlight specific areas within the book. The use of colour in this example, dealing with this lovely theme of loss that permeates the phone booth in Mr. Hirota's garden. So yeah, really lovely sort of example to show deeper engagement and the enriching in sort of the discussion and practice in the classroom.
So we recommend it to you. Those were the books we finally made the cut, but we're not suggesting these books are the only books that can be examined through the picture book framework. All books can be, but some obviously surface the meanings more clearly in words, pictures, or in that combo. So now we're moving on from that research update to share from Benny Cara, who works with us on the secondary programme, some recommendations of key picture books that she wants to share. So over to Benny. Welcome again, Benny.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be able to share some picture books with you. I'm a secondary specialist, and the important aspect of looking at picture books for me is in the way in which picture books can allow questions to take place in the classroom. And I'm going to take you through 3 texts that I think are particularly useful in that context, and talk to you a little bit about how you might want to explore them in the classroom with secondary aged pupils, because picture books are not just for little ones. So I'm going to start with The Red Tree. Some of you will be familiar with the work of Sean Tan. I was a massive fan of The Arrival. And the richness of illustration and the richness of possibility for interpretation of that. And when I came across The Red Tree, I was struck by the spareness of the text, and the richness of the illustrations, and the eccentricity of some of the representations of the landscape that appear in the text, which can be used as a real kind of question starter, a conversation starter. And I'm particularly interested in The Red Tree as a text that really explores mental health. I like the idea of books as pharmacy, being able to prescribe a book to really kind of explore mental health issues with our young people. And the very first lines allow us to understand that this is a book about how you feel, and how your day can go from bad to worse. The first lines, sometimes the day begins with nothing to look forward to. And I certainly think that kind of sense of hopelessness that can happen when young people experiencing mental health difficulties, the images really represent the heaviness of that feeling. And the book goes on to talk about how the darkness can overcome you, how nobody can understand, all feelings that are very much part of the kind of teenage experience, whether that's a mental health issue or whether that's just the process of growing up. And
Penny, you've got a minute left.
The images are particularly interesting and get more complex as the time goes on. The second text is a book called Leon and the Place Between by Angela McAllister and Graham Baker Smith. And I have to say, I admire this book purely because of how beautiful it is. It talks about magic. It talks about in-between spaces. It's beautifully constructed, it's tactile, and Leon experiences being engaged in magic, and what happens when you are magicked away by a magician. And I love the illustrations that go with it and the richness of that. And then the last book that I'd like to recommend, it's been flashed up on the screen before, is Black Dog by Levi Pinfold. I'm a big fan of Levi Pinfold. And again, this one speaks to ideas about how adults perceive the world and how young people perceive the world. And the idea that the black dog appears so huge to adults, and yet the character called Small Hope is the one who manages to shrink that black dog down into a manageable size. And I think it speaks about the innocence of children, and the primacy of hope in times of darkness. And I certainly think it's a powerful read for children who are exploring the world, and seeing big issues being all consuming, and how actually the youth of today are very much the answers of tomorrow. So to me,
Thanks,
it is the
great selection. Rich is saying how wonderful that selection is, and he's one of the aficionados in this place. So you made some great choices. We're moving on now to Mirella Bro from Heath Primary in Derbyshire as an example of practice that she's already shared on the site, which is really, quite frankly, stunning. And I know, will be delighted to hear her share it. Over to you, Mirella.
Good evening, everyone. Have you ever witnessed the sparkle in a child's eye as they discover their favourite book? That's the magic our reading ambassadors cultivate here at Heath through their commitment with picture fiction. Our mission is clear: to inspire and engage, and our reading ambassadors are promoting picture fiction through regular reading aloud sessions and by making books accessible in our unique reading shed. These visuals capture the joy and engagement of all of our children, and we witness this daily and bringing the stories to life. Initiatives also include creating a diverse library with titles for everyone to enjoy, as well as scheduled reading time during the unstructured time of the day, making this a highlighted part of our daily routine. Let's talk impact. Beyond participation, our reading ambassadors are actively shaping our reading culture. They've organized reading author visits and virtual events, enriching our children's exposure to diverse narratives. They are also championing reading by hosting events, taking an active part in our Author of the Week assembly, performing poetry, or helping me choose diverse book selection. One ambassador shared that, "I've always enjoyed reading, but since becoming a reading ambassador, I find myself reading even more. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to encourage others to discover the joy of reading and aspire to become ambassadors themselves." In conclusion, our reading ambassadors are not solely promoting literacy, they are igniting lifelong learners. We're providing our children with ample resources, with vibrant reading environments, and obviously we give our reading ambassadors the recognition for the dedication that they are showing, and we're really looking forward to seeing where this initiative is going to take us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mirella. It's just absolutely wonderful to hear about all the work at Heath with the reading ambassadors, and we look forward to seeing what happens next. Now, we know everyone joining us tonight really values the power of reading for pleasure, and the OURfP team, we work across the sector in a range of ways to raise awareness of this agenda. Our core work is focused on three strands. Firstly, we work with individual teachers through programs such as teacher reading groups with the United Kingdom Literacy Association, and many of you here tonight are either leaders or participants in TRGs. Secondly, we work with early career teachers through our Reading Ambassadors program. And I can't wait to hear from Poppy and Ellen tonight, two of our fantastic ambassadors from Liverpool Hope. And finally, we also run this year-long reading schools program, building a culture of reading for both primary and secondary. So this program is about supporting participants with purpose in the implementation progress, helping them to foster choice-led reading development from the inside out. So September 24 will actually start the 8th year of the OU Reading Schools program. And as you can see in the map, there are actually over 400 graduates from across England and Wales. So I've been running the primary program since 2017, and we're looking forward to welcoming our second group of cohorts for the Key Stage 3 program as well. This year, we even had a participant from the Isles of Scilly. You might be able to see it just in the corner there. As you can see from this quote, the program gives schools time and space to develop that strategic focus on reading for pleasure. So we hope you can join us for a briefing event in May to find out more about this evidence-informed program, either primary or secondary phase. It is all about boosting readership for all pupils, but especially for those who aren't experiencing the full benefits of volitional agentic reading. You can sign up for a briefing by scanning the QR code, or I'm sure Debbie will pop a link in the chat. Now, we don't want you to miss out if you are already a graduate of the Reading Schools program, because we do have a program for people who've graduated called Strengthening and Sustaining. It's a fantastic offer. This will be running in the 3rd year. So we do hope if you have already participated in Reading Schools in the OU Reading Schools program that you'll join us. So do contact us to find out more. With that in mind, we have a fantastic Reading Schools program participant with us tonight, Pam, from Nayland Primary School in Pembrokeshire, and she is going to share some more top texts. Over to you, Pam.
Thank you, Kelly. So the 3 texts that I'm going to share with you tonight were actually chosen by my Year 5 and 6 class. So the first one that they wanted me to share with you is this one, which is Star Whale. This is written by Nicola Davis and Peta through our Reading for Pleasure journey, we identified that we didn't really share poetry with our children as we should be. And Nicola is actually a local author to us, not living far away from our school. It has 40 different poems in it, and they're displayed on double-page spreads here.
Can I just interrupt and say, keep close to the microphone because you're slightly coming and going, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Keep facing us and your voice forward. That's when it works best, I think. Thank you.
And the poems are over a double page. There's a variety of different poems, from ones that have educational messages to them, protective species, and just to tongue twisters that the children love as well. The illustrations actually were a key point of the book because the children enjoyed discovering that Nicola actually wrote the poems after looking at the paintings. And so lots of discussions about how we can be inspired by paintings and pictures with our writing. The second book that the children chose is Peace on Earth, and this is by Smriti Halls and David Litchfield. And it's a book with a message about peace and kindness and friendships, and how these things are very easy yet very fragile. The children resonated with many of the messages in this book. Again, the illustrations were a key part of the things that they loved from this book. The way that the author has linked emotions to colour, how the images change. One of the children actually said, "Miss, you can almost read this book without the words being there. You can just look at the colours and the pictures that the author presents, and you can read the story from that." So they really enjoyed just looking through the images and the pictures in this book as well. And then finally, the third book, my Year 5 and 6 learners absolutely love Tom Percival. And when they knew that this new one was coming out, they had it on their waiting list that we just had to get. So they were eagerly awaiting every day to see if the post delivered the book. So this is written by Tom Percival and Richard Jones. And it's a story about the smallest voice, but how powerful that small voice is. We talk a lot here about children's rights and that everybody has the right to be listened to. There's so many other messages within it about bravery, joining together, friendships, and with lots of my children about to make the move on to secondary school, they really found that message important. And again, the illustrations just breathtaking within this book. The children spent a long time just poring over the images. So they are my 3 books that my children wanted me to share with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And it's lovely that you actually invited the children to share agency and choice. Great. Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to introduce Helen Hendry, who many of you will know, and Poppy and Ellen, who are 2 of our splendid Reading for Pleasure ambassadors. Over to you 3.
Thank you, Teresa. So just before Poppy and Ellen speak, I'm just going to share a moment about the Student Teacher Reading for Pleasure ambassadors. So the OU and the United Kingdom Literacy Association offer a free year-long CPD programme, which is specifically for student teachers. And we work with their university or school-centred initial teacher training providers to support them and to help them to support their peers' knowledge and pedagogy for Reading for Pleasure. So if anybody's interested to hear more after they've heard from Poppy and Ellen, do get in touch with us, because anybody working in the IT sector is very welcome to involve their students in this work. So over to you, Poppy and Ellen, to tell us a bit about what you've been up to.
Okay, so me and Ellen are both student teachers at Hope, and we were both asked to be student reading for pleasure ambassadors at usually you get nominated by your cohort or you get asked, but we got asked to instead, which was quite different. Also, go move on to the next slide.
So Poppy and I are both neurodivergent, so reading didn't come easy to us, but we've got a real passion for diverse literature and ensuring that books are fun and engaging and accessible for all pupils. So despite our challenges with reading, we're eager to share books and ensure and promote a love of reading for all students and student teachers. So our role and focus. As part of our role, the main part is listening to our cohort. So we've had lectures, we've taken Mentimeters, we've taken surveys to see what our cohort want and where their gaps in their knowledge are. From our collecting of our data, we found out poetry was a really big area that people didn't feel confident with. So on our Padlet, we've created a list of poems and poets that they can recommend, as well as doing some fantastic work with Levi Tafari, which has been absolutely amazing. We also use our we also do book recommendations on our newsletter each week, because part of our role is to support teachers, to give them confidence about recommending high quality children's literature texts.
Okay, we're going to talk about the impact now. So we're still on our journey as student reading for pleasure ambassadors. However, we've begun to see some impacts already through like the conversations we've had with our peers and our tutors, as well as schools, because we've talked on placements and also got in contact with other schools as well. And we have just seen that increased interest in reading from a result of these conversations, as well on our Padlet, because we've got a book recommendation part where what Ellen had said, and we've had loads of book recommendations, and also just having that opportunity for people to put their opinions in. We've seen a really positive feedback as a result, and it's just been a really positive thing that we've done, and we've seen a big increase in confidence and interest in reading as a result.
We could also share our Padlet link in the chat if anybody wants to have a look or add any book recommendations. That would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen and Poppy. That was really fabulous. And I hope you can spot in the chat line that many of the attendees are saying they wish they'd had student teacher ambassadors when they were training and have your enthusiasm and talent to share. Thank you so much. We're moving on now to a Rural Teacher Reading Group leader, Melissa Clothan, who's going to be sharing with us some of our updates from her group. So over to Melissa, welcome.
Good evening. Well, this is our second year now, running our Rural Teacher Reading Group. And we've decided for this year that our main focus is to gather a bank of recommended diverse reads that we know that from our personal experiences in the classroom, we can then share with other teachers rather than a kind of a not very personal list downloaded online. So you can see on the screen there some of the recommended reads that we've gathered at different meetings that we've had so far. That's a little flyer advertising the Teachers Reading Group. So these recommended reads are then shared in our Wirral English subject leader sessions for those people that are unable to attend the Teachers Reading Groups. So that the intention being we can spread the impact of our tiny little Teachers Reading Group across the whole of the Wirral Peninsula. And we know then that subject leaders can then share our recommendations with teachers in their own school. And one of our teachers has a librarian in her school, which they're really lucky to have. And she then reflects our recommendations in displays and books on offer to children in the library in their school. And she also sends these lists out in a fortnightly blog to parents and includes our reads as well, which is fantastic. We've gone down the route of having a genre focus in each meeting. So we focus on the areas that we think that we need to develop our knowledge in. We've worked quite a lot on developing opportunities for book blether in the classroom. And I came back from the conference in Nottingham packed full of ideas that we've then gone off to implement in our own schools. One of the things that seems to be working quite well, and this is from John Biddle that I've seen him use quite a lot as well, the book blankets. It's such a simple, easy thing to do, but they're proving so successful each week that without fail, the children are demanding that we do a book blanket because they've got a book that they want to share and they want to talk about. And we've extended the book blankets as well to our subject leader updates. So we had an empathy session recently. So all of the leaders from across the world all bought a book blanket, an empathy book, and we all shared it and had a real good chat about it before we started all of our training. Other things that we've done is we've then had a Valentine's Day book swap where the children brought in books for each other. We've had reading dens where the children have spent the morning taking great care building their own makeshift dens, and we've just talked about books all morning. So those opportunities for that book blether have really started to increase in our different schools. We've also started in between our sessions to have a book focus. So we vote for a book that we all decide that we want to focus on. And we do that with the children in school as well. So we put the power back in the hands of the children for what books that they want to enjoy. So our next book that we're currently reading is Tom Percival's Silas and the Misfits, which comes directly from the Nottingham conference again. So I think picture books are going to have to be our next meeting focus, though, based on the research earlier. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's fabulous. It's lovely to hear how a reading group spins out into a wider frame by to local librarians to parents, and then into so many other different classrooms. So brilliant work, Marilla. Lovely to hear it. And now we're going to be handing over to Curtis and Catherine, who are going to be, meeting with and interviewing the esteemed author Nadia Shireen, who's with us tonight, who are really delighted to be welcoming. Over to you two.
Hi, well, thank you. This is my first time being an interviewer, so really looking forward to it. Is Nadia there?
Sure am. Hello.
Oh yeah, hi.
Hiya.
My first time as well, Nadia.
Well, don't worry. It's my first time being interviewed by both of you as well. So we're all on the same level.
Yes. I didn't know if before we started some questions whether you wanted to do any sharing of reading of any of your books.
Well, if you've got, I mean, I'm very happy to quickly read Jeffrey Gets the Jitters, if you like.
Yes,
lovely.
Please.
I had a bit of resonance. You'll have to excuse my screen sharing capability, but I'm going to try now, and let's see. Oh, I don't think I can. Can I? Oh, maybe I can. Hang on. Bear with. Right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Fabulous. So you'll have to excuse the blank speech bubble, and I will read you Jeffrey Gets the Jitters. This is Jeffrey. If you asked Jeffrey if he were okay, he would say, yes, I'm okay. But Jeffrey is not okay. He hasn't been feeling quite right for some time. It started last night as he lay in bed. Jeffrey was thinking about the next day. He was looking forward to seeing Barbara. He knew there would be pizza for lunch. But what was happening after lunch? Jeffrey couldn't remember. Suddenly, he felt a peculiar flutter in his tummy, a tiny little jitter. And then he thought, what if Barbara didn't like him anymore? What if he'd lost Big Dave? What if massive dinosaurs with lasers coming out of their eyes stomped all over him? It was all quite worrying. Jeffrey's tummy had been feeling jittery ever since. It was as if it was full of wiggly worms. And those little wiggly worms are saying, hiya, howdy. Then Jeffrey started to feel all hot and sweaty. Everything suddenly seemed too bright and too noisy. By now, the jitters felt really out of control. All Jeffrey wanted to do was hide. So he did. But it turned out there was no hiding from his jitters. Excuse me, said Jeffrey, but who are you and what are you doing? Hiya, we're your jitters, said a jitter. Well, why have I got jitters? asked Geoffrey. Oh, you must be worrying about something, said the jitter. Whenever you get really worried about something, that's when you get a jitter. But why are there so many of you? Asked Geoffrey. Oh, if there's one jitter, soon there'll be another and another and another. All those jitters are saying in those eerily empty speech bubbles. Now the jitters had completely taken over. Geoffrey decided he'd had enough. How do I get rid of you? He asked. Oh, that's easy, said a helpful jitter. Take a deep breath in and then slowly blow out the birthday candles of a very old tortoise. Then stretch up to the sky and down to your toes. We really hate that. Geoffrey started to feel a bit better. So he decided he needed to get hold of a jitter for himself. Then he could take a really good look at it. Gotcha. Well, the jitter didn't like that at all. And what you can't see on this picture is the jitter on the right-hand side. That big light bulb is shining on the jitter, and the jitter, it says losing big Dave on the jitter's tummy. Oh, said Geoffrey, so that's what I've been worrying about. Oh, don't tell anyone, said the jitter, else then I'll completely disappear. So Geoffrey stepped outside into the sunshine and saw his friend Barbara. Hey, Geoffrey, said Barbara, how are you? Well, I have these worries, said Geoffrey. And in the speech bubble, Geoffrey's saying, there are these massive dinosaurs. And now Geoffrey really was okay. And at the bottom right there, you can see the jitters saying, party's over, guys. Oh, and this page is really useless without the text. See, this is an insight, everyone, into what happens when you email your designer saying, could I have a PDF of Geoffrey, but without the text? It somewhat loses something, but let me unshare the screen. Don't know how you stop doing that. Let's see. Can I unshare? Does anyone know how you unshare?
Sarah, can you press the share screen button at the bottom?
Stop share. There, it worked. If I showed you in the old-fashioned way, the last page is this guide to worries, which just runs through different worries. We have the brood, the niggle, the spiral, which is my favourite, the frazzle, the fret, very small and annoyed, and the panic, who's got its pants on its head. So that is Geoffrey Gets the Jitters.
Thank you very much for that, Nadia. And it was a good choice of a book there, because that leads quite nicely to my first question. And my first question is about the fact that many of your books have a strong theme linked to emotions. Was there any reason behind that choice?
No, I would say that Geoffrey Gets the Jitters is the first time it's been a bit more willful. I tend not to start with any kind of theme when I'm making a picture book. I'm quite anti-message. I'm sort of led by different things. You know, I do, all my books begin like this, in kind of sketchbooks of different shapes and sizes. And I just draw until I meet a character I like, and then I see what that character suggests. So the book that preceded Geoffrey Gets the Jitters was Barbara Throws a Wobbler, which is here. This is a board book version we're bringing out later this year. And Barbara is about a cat who has a massive tantrum. And this came out, it was meant to come out in 2020. It ended up coming out a year later, by which time we were all extremely stressed. So it really resonated. It really struck a nerve. It's the book I've had the most response about from teachers and parents who've, you know, stopped me and said this was a very important book for us. So I did want to look at that again. I wanted to explore, I thought it was really valuable to explore children having emotions, not necessarily solving them, but just having them. So I wanted to do that again, but it had to be with an emotion that I really understood and believed in. I didn't want to just be Googling emotion and then stick a pin in one. And anxiety, sadly, is one I'm really familiar with. I used to get tummy aches when I was a kid because I'd be so worried all the time and I wouldn't talk about things. So I thought, well, I'll do that because it feels close to home. And I'm all, I can't really make a picture book unless I'm emotionally invested in it. So I couldn't just, I don't think I'll be able to just reel off loads of emotions and do books about that, to be honest. But this felt different because it was extremely, I always say this is like my autobiography.
A tummy autobiography, no less.
Yeah.
Catherine, what are you going to ask? Go for it.
Well, I can honestly say I probably relate to Barbara Throws a Wobbler, and I've shared a number of your books now with the children at school, but Grimwood I read myself, and there was something in that book that made me think about you, Nadia, and that was the stag Titus. Writing his own story, writing a book, and it had taken him 3 years to do, and he sat there at his desk one day and he hummed and he hawed, and he starts to write, and an hour or so later he sits back and he goes, yeah, that's great, and he's written 7 words, a great day's work. And it did make me wonder, do your ideas for your books come from the inspiration of real events or people, or are they fresh from your imagination?
Well, I can't really separate out the two, to be honest. It's like soil in your garden. It's like, you chuck some old tea bags on there and they all filter down and it all just makes this soil richer and richer. There'll be an incident that happened to me years ago that might be deeply buried, and I'll kind of get my, creative trowel out and dig around and it will come up. And then I'll hear a story that someone else tells, or I'll spot something in the street. It all feeds into the same soil, mulch. And if you're lucky, something will grow from it. Titus is definitely, every single character I make, there's a bit of me in it. And Titus struggling to write 7 words and then relaxing with a cream donut. There's a huge part of myself in that, yeah.
I did wonder.
Definitely.
Brilliant. I also, during the library sessions over the last couple of weeks, I've been speaking to the children at school, sharing your books with them, and I asked them to create some questions for me that I could ask for you.
Amazing.
So, a young lady in year 2 did say to me, what did you enjoy reading as a child, and did you have a favourite book?
I don't think this is so boring. I don't think I did have a favourite, because we didn't have, in my house, my parents were keen readers, but we didn't have a culture of children's books in the house. I don't know why, we just didn't really. There were no picture books around. But my mum went to the library every week to get her Agatha Christie and Dick Francis, and would drag me along and just kind of drop kick me into the children's section, and I would just read and read and read and read and absorb everything. So I don't have a huge amount. I always feel on the back foot. I don't have a huge amount of picture book memories, and I wasn't read to as a child. Again, my parents were lovely, but it just culturally wasn't a thing that we did, The Meg and Mod books, really, I loved those so much when I was a kid. And then as I got older, I just picked up and read what was lying around, which was what I sort of inherited from various cousins or my brother. So it was not groundbreaking stuff, Enid Blyton, St. Clair's, Roald Dahl. I adored Roald Dahl. He was the first writer who I really felt was speaking directly to me. So I was confused when I found out he was really famous. I was like, wow, you've heard of Roald Dahl? No way. The Animals of Farthing Wood books, loved those, by Colin Dan. There's a real line between those books and Grimwood. I always say it's like the Animals of Farthing Wood, but it's been put through a dishwasher. I loved those books.
Thank you. And you've kind of answered what I was going to ask next, so I'm going to skip over that question. So you've collaborated with other authors before, and I just wondered how you kind of make your decision about who you're going to work with. Are they people you know, friends, or have you just chosen them for a different reason?
I haven't actually. I've worked with Rachel Bright on 2 picture books, and I collaborated a couple of other times, but it's something I'm still, quite tentative about. Rachel Bright, as I'm sure you all know, is such a picture book legend. Oh, there you go, Slug in Love. Yeah, so Slug in Love and Snail in Space. And it's actually not down to me. So her publisher for those picture books got in touch with me, and I'm very good friends with the editor, I should say, before I tell you what she said to me. She said, Rachel's texts are so fantastic and they're really sweet. So we needed someone a bit sour to balance things out. She said. But I think they got me on board because they were like, how do we make a snail and a slug? You know, that's a real challenge to make them appealing. And for me, it was a no-brainer working with Rachel. I was delighted to be asked. So often the relationship between you and an author, and I'm speaking as an illustrator, is quite remote. You know, you don't necessarily meet each other. It all goes through the publishers. That said, I have a book that will be, I can't tell you who annoyingly, but it will be announced soon. I am working on a picture book, and this is with a friend. So usually friends or acquaintances, tennis partners say, I've written a children's book, will you illustrate it for me? And you have to go, oh, sorry, I'm a bit busy, I can't. This was the opposite. It was a friend who sheepishly admitted they'd done a picture book years ago, and me saying, this is great, let's do it. So it's rare that happens, but that will be soon. But I think that's the exception rather than the rule. Usually it's the publishers in charge.
Okay, thank you.
Super. My year fours were in the library today, and 3 children came up to me where they'd started writing books. Mrs. Handley, will you just listen to this? So for those 3 children and the others in my school, what advice would you give an aspiring young writer who would love to have their own work published?
And it's really hard for us to let go and be free of having rules. And I mean that, you know, for myself as well. So to let children be as free as possible with what they're writing, to just carry on and not get too hung up on it should be like this, it should be like that. It's okay. It's harder to do. It's really hard to do that. It's really hard to have that much creative freedom, especially for children who are always worrying what's the person next to me doing, or is this right, miss, or, you know, whatever. So trying to give children confidence that whatever they choose to create is valid is the most important thing. And sadly, I think the hardest thing and quite an ephemeral thing. But just so validation for what they're writing. I mean, I always tell the story when I started writing, I was a very shy child. I barely spoke. And we were given like, oh, write a story, you know, for homework. And I went home and I wrote 16 pages in this exercise book and did illustrations and all the rest of it. And the teacher couldn't believe it. And I used felt tips, which weren't allowed in my school. But she obviously thought there was something in it. And she read out the story to everyone over the week. And it became, people were like, oh, let's have the next chapter. And that was my first experience of kind of validation that, you know, actually I made up this whole thing and it's fine. It's good. People like it.
I think that's a brilliant example, if I can.
I told myself I'd give you quick answers, but I'm not. Sorry.
No worries. I just think that's a brilliant example because feedback, which is what you got, validation was feedback with people listening, and it made a difference. Yeah. And I think that's just really vital. We've been doing some recent research about writing for pleasure, and feedback that is not evaluative, but is affirmative and supportive seems from the research evidence to be making a difference to young people's sense of self-efficacy as writers. And I think in education we too often engage in the kind of critical appraisal as well as some positive feedback, and perhaps we overweight the critical because we want to push the progress, but we don't celebrate the space.
I think when it comes to creative work, unfortunately, even as adults, you know, you can be told, this is great, I love this character, this is fantastic. I'm not so sure about that sentence. And unfortunately, all you'll hear is, I'm not so sure about that sentence. And it deadens the rest of it. So I know it sounds almost mollycoddling, but I think just being really aggressively positive is necessary to get confidence at a level. Then you can, you know, tweak and shape things maybe.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what we found in this recent work with Helen Hendry, assertive, positive feedback. And it's a lovely phrase, aggressively positive. I shall hold it and align it to you. Thank you. Wonderful. Have we got time for one more question and then we're closing for the night? So go for it, Catherine.
Perhaps could you share any early details? I'm assuming that you've not given up writing and drawing. Have you got any up and coming books you've written or anything you'd like to write about going forward?
Well, I'm deep in the world of Grimwood, which seems to be, people are enjoying it, which is the best thing. And my publisher said, it seems to be causing playground chatter. And I was like, well, that's great. That'll do me. I'm not bothered about anything else if it's causing playground chatter. So I've just finished Grimwood 4's went off to print on Friday. And I have a few more Grimwood commitments. And I'm, if people still like it, I'll carry on, but I have to see if people still like it. I'm working on 2 other picture books that are both collaborations. And I also, hopefully many of you know that I do a podcast with Frank Cottrell Boyce, the amazing Frank Cottrell Boyce, because he knows everything about children's books and I know nothing. So the idea is we're on a desert island together, just reading, and we welcome children's authors onto the island. It's called the Island of Brilliant. I don't know why we called it that, but we just did. And it's available to listen. And, we interview all sorts of top-notch people. So I recommend that.
Right.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll certainly follow that. And thank you very much. There are lots of fans of both the Grimwood series, but also the others. And Barbara Gets Wobbler is in the chat line being the book of the night. So thank you very much for that. So many people saying, I love Barbara. It's like we've made friends with this girl called Barbara. I think Doris might be the next name of the character in a book. So let's hope Doris gets kicked in there somewhere.
Thank you so
very
much,
Nadia. Really privileged to have you here. Thank you.
Bye.
We're passing now over to Steph to close us for the night with some strategies and ideas about what colleagues might do next. And that's the podcast. Thanks, Kelly. The Island of Brilliant in the chat line.
Yeah, okay, over to me for the updates then. So are you planning a book, Nick, this year? We hope so. Do check out the website for some new resources and recommendations coming soon. They'll help you. If you're a TRG leader, make sure you've got this date in the diary. Tuesday, the 30th of April will be the final TRG leader CPD event for this year. We've got lots of useful things planned, so make sure you can come, and there will be exclusive TRG leader events continuing next year. So you may have noticed a vlog has recently gone up onto the events section of our website. This is the first in a series of 3 made in collaboration with World Book Day. It's all about overcoming barriers to reading for pleasure. So something for everyone, please check it out. The final webinar will be on the 12th of June. Come if you can. Right, the deadline is looming for entries to the HarperCollins Reading for Pleasure Awards. It's a very prestigious award and celebrates the best OURfP practice in the country. Get your entry in before Friday, the 3rd of May. Our close colleagues and partners at UKLA are holding their international conference in Brighton on the 5th to the 7th of July. Get your tickets on their website and get yourself registered for our very own Reading and Writing for Pleasure conference at Milton Keynes on Saturday, the 15th of June. We'll be joined by authors Hannah Gold and Matt Goodfellow and all sorts of superstars who are leading a smorgasbord of workshops and keynote talks. Absolutely don't miss the highlight of the year. I hope to see you there.
Brilliant, Steph. Thank you so much. It's going to be a great conference, only 45 quid. It would be lovely to have everybody there. We've already got quite a few people signed up, so don't wait too long to get your ticket. So big thank you from me for everybody who's attending. We've had over 140 people here at Height, and we know that lots more will be watching online, but also a very big thank you to all the colleagues who's contributed this evening, hurried along by me, for their contributions to our newsletter live on picture fiction. Biggest one, of course, to Nadia for coming with us and joining us tonight. And now we're moving to a book wave. So please get your book out ready, share with somebody else. And thanks, Joe and others, saying it's been a useful session to feel that energy behind the Reading for Pleasure agenda. Please wave your book and take me out of the spotlight so I can call on some others, Debbie, please, so we can see everybody around. I'm going for that Rachel Bright. Anna Harrison, give us a call out. What are you recommending? Take us, voice off and get ready.
I'm recommending Scarlet Ibis by Jill Lewis. We had Jill Lewis come and talk to our trainee teachers at Roehampton recently. And it's an absolutely wonderful book. I mean, it's just got a wealth of information, but it's about an older girl who's looking after her brother who's got some special needs, and it starts with this trip to the zoo, and the brother ends up in a pond on the zoo, and it's just incredible. I would recommend it for sort of years 5 and 6, but if you haven't read Jill Lewis, do get her books, particularly Skyhawk as well.
Yeah, Jill Lewis, go for it. Lots of love there. Let's jump to somebody else. Marianne Doherty, what are you recommending? Juniper something, but I'm not sure what. Do you turn your mic on?
Sorry, I'm recommending Juniper Me. This is the second book in the series. It's a sort of graphic novel style with some of the most beautiful illustrations you will ever find. It's sort of all themed around nature and saving nature, and it's just lovely. It's gorgeous.
Thank you so much. Don't know that at all. Juniper and Me, lovely. Can we leap Claire Garland, who's on my second screen? What are you waving at us, Claire?
I've got Milo's Monster by Tom Percival, another popular one in our infant department in the school. Tom Percival titles are all popular, but this one in particular, I love it.
Great, thank you. Let's go for a man for a change. Richard Parsons, what are you recommending for us?
I've got Akisi, All Tales of Mystery, which is by Aboy and Sapin. It's sort of short, it's a graphic novel. It's a lot of little short stories to dip in and out, following a girl in Africa, kind of getting into mischief and having lots of fun.
Great, thank you. I don't know that one either. Too many books I don't know here. This is not good enough. So we better not ask anybody where to. What about Mary Rose Grieve, all the way from Dubai? What time is it there in Dubai now?
Late. It's very late.
Tell us the truth, Mary Rose. When is it?
It is 11:30.
All right. Good for you.
I'm recommending The Legend of Sally Jones, which is the prequel to The Murderer's Ape. And last week we were back online for 4 days because of the awful storms. So I was doing Library Live again. It felt like we were all back in COVID. And I read this one to everyone, people in year 5 and 6, and it took 40 minutes. And I started with 180 children, and about 60 of them left at 11 o'clock because they had to go to PE live, but I managed to keep the rest of them. And I got to the end and I cried again for the second time that I've read it. And I'd say it's a fantastic book. It's illustrated, lots of illustrations, but it's just a longer story, and the children absolutely love it. It's brilliant, fast
Can you
paced.
stick it in the chat line, please? I want to go by it and I missed the beginning. Thank you very much. I'm
Yes.
moving on. Sarah Gossett. Oh, Rich has already. Sarah Gossett, what are you recommending? It looks interesting.
So I've got Fox. It's a lovely picture book. I would say years 3, 4 maybe. And it's what's really interesting about it is that not all of the text is the same way up. So we can have real interesting conversations about the layout of the book, and just the images are gorgeous.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to choose one more person because we're going over into our gin and tonic time. So can we ask Fiona, please? Fiona, you've got the big kettle or something big? I can see the word big there. You're on mute, Fiona.
Okay.
Go for it.
Thanks, there we go. So this is Tell Me What It's Like to Be Big by Joyce Dunbar and Debbie Cleary. And it's a really lovely one for early years, just about growing up and the worries that little ones might have about growing up and how it all might be a bit different, but that it's all okay really, and not quite as bad as it seems. So it's very sweet. It's a lovely little one.
Right. Well, we know what it's like to be big, but we also know what it's like to be big and challenged by being big and grown up or whatever. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're 3 minutes over, so we probably should stop. But a big thank you in particular to Debbie, who does a lot of work behind the scenes to make this happen and put it all together and get our rehearsals. So can we give her a virtual or a loud round of applause, please? Because that's a huge piece of work, drawing everybody in. I hope it's been useful to everybody, and there are books here you're going to buy and borrow from others, and not just spend your money on it. And also thank you again to Nadia, because it was such a privilege to hear her voicing her understandings. And that metaphor about the soil, I think I'm going away to dwell upon, whether we can dig down there, and that notion of using her imagination as well as her life combined as authors do. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Time to pour a drink, not just a coffee. Get yourself something decent. Cheers. Good night.
Good night.